Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, and as I continue my extreme horror marathon, this was not in my initial collection video. I just picked this up today, and I remembered this has to be part of it. I've never seen it. It's not, until now, it's not as extreme as some of the other films that I've done on here, but it's definitely a notorious film with a troubled release history. That is 2008's The Poughkeepsie tapes. Initially, came out, originally it started showing in festivals, I believe in 2007 or 8, 2008. And it was supposed to have a theatrical release in 2008. May 2007, it premiered at Tribeca. It was supposed to be released through MGM in February 2008, but it was pulled from the schedule even though it was advertised, and it sort of went around in the bootleg, even VHS underground circuit. This was a highly sought after film. And it's a faux documentary, almost like a shockumentary, as if there was this serial killer, well, even the tagline, in the 1990s, a serial killer terrorized an upstate New York town. Some murderers leave clues, some leave warnings. This one left the Poughkeepsie tapes. And yes, he left this whole, like 2,400 hours of tapes. So it's kind of like if, imagine if Fred Vogel from August Underground had been caught, and we see his footage mixed with interviews of law enforcement, various FBI people like profilers, visual analysts, professors, families of the victims about the crimes. And so it's done found footage. It kind of, I guess, a similar film to this would have been like The Fourth Kind, which is a film I'm not a fan of. I saw that back when it came out. This came out right around the time, shortly before like Cloverfield, came out the same year as Quarantine. So this was before the big Paranormal Activity hype. Paranormal Activity. I meant to say found footage hype. But it was slowly building, and it was written and directed by John Eric Dowdle. Directed, he wrote the screenplay. The story was by him and his brother, Drew Dowdle. Edited by John Eric Dowdle and Elliot Greenberg. It's still rated R. It wasn't until I got back in the car after buying this I saw it was rated R. I thought it was uncut. This is the Blu-ray release, but it also comes with a DVD. This is the Shout Factory release. It's not really a reversible cover, but it's a shot of one of the FBI people. I have to say I really enjoyed this film. Again, it's not as extreme as or Scream Factory rather. It's not as extreme as August Underground. Like, he doesn't really go to the places that those films do. But those scenes from the serial killer are shot on video. It's very similar quality. And that was sort of how they helped capture the illusion. They shot all the serial killer stuff on video. And then, like, the documentary stuff, the interviews were done on, like, a higher budget camera. And it's told through chapters. Like, there's, like, the introduction. Then there's one of First Blood, where we see the tape of his first victim, which was a young girl. The next chapter is about how he gets better. And pretty much how this killer fooled the FBI because he kept... this movie was very influenced by Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. In fact, there's a couple features on here. There's a half-hour making of with the director, and I believe it's his brother. That's about a half-hour long. Then there's another feature that is The Willing Victim, which stupidly I did not check out before this, but the half-hour making of was pretty informative. And yeah, this was released in, I think, 2018. So for 10 years, this movie was sort of banned or sought after, and it was very, very hard to get. But I'm glad to have it now. It does have some, so where it doesn't go to the level of August Underground, it does have this sense of dread, this atmosphere. It does a good job at being fairly authentic looking. Like the chapter First Blood, which is his first victim, which is a little 8-year-old girl on her front lawn playing with her dolls. He approaches her. You know, she says she can't talk to strangers. She doesn't want to play with the camera. She doesn't want to go with him. We see the camera kind of get set down. We hear a noise, and we get the shaky cam running back to the car where we see, you know, the back seat. Kind of. They actually let the actor, I believe it was Ben Mesmer, I think is what they said his name was. Ben Mesmer plays the killer. The cinematographer actually gave him a camera, and he shot all his own stuff because they didn't want, I thought this was a nice touch, they didn't want a filmmaker to shoot it. They wanted it to look as raw and unexperienced as possible. But they liked the idea of the theatrics of the home movies becoming better and better as time goes on. The killer's name is listed as Edward Carver. Stacy Chbosky plays pretty much the character that we kind of follow through this whole documentary. Because she was, I'm going to say spoilers here, but I highly recommend this. If you like August Underground, you can definitely handle this. If you like found footage, faux documentary type stuff, this is one of the better ones I've seen. There's not too many about a serial killer and, you know, kind of making it look like a true crime documentary. This was kind of a breath of fresh air for me, because after watching the Paranormal Activities and, like, Devil Inside and all that shit, this was a breath of fresh air, because this is more my taste of film. I do like found footage, but if it's more the subject I like, I thought this was well done. I did enjoy this. I do see how some people could find it boring or underwhelming, especially if you're expecting an August Underground extreme type film. But she plays this woman, Cheryl Dempsey, who is abducted from her home. Which, scenes like this I thought were pretty creepily done. I mean, he goes in her home, he hides in her closet. She has her boyfriend over. Boyfriend's in the kitchen, he kills him. Then we see the camera pan up, and we see her standing there. And she starts to run away, and then the camera gets all shaky. We hear him screaming as he's chasing her. So, a lot of it feels like the home invasion found footage segment of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Also in Henry talks about if you change your method of killing, it becomes harder for them to track you. So a lot of the interviewees, like FBI profilists and stuff like that, talk about how he kept changing his MO. Profiles were all over the place. Like, it's a white male, 18 to 25, white male, 25 to 32, black male, later age, disorganized, organized, probably works in law enforcement, probably unemployed. They make this guy sound like the most prolific, smartest serial killer ever. It does go into how he was even able to, you know, he got his, was it the Water Street Butcher or whatever it was? That was the media name he was given. He made it sound like he was targeting just prostitutes so everyone else could keep their guard down, so he could target everyone else. He was able to go after certain victims so that it would look like this sort of undercover cop gets, fingered for it, gets put to death. After he was put to death September 9th, 01. And then, he keeps playing with law enforcement, saying you missed a body. That body had DNA that would exonerate him. He was exonerated September 12th, 2001. And it was a high-profile case, but since 9/11 happened, it pushed the story down, and no one knew about it. And there's interviews with his son, who's on the disc of the DVD, pretty much saying how his dad is still known as the Butcher because the story was so underplayed. It's very short. I mean, it's 86 minutes. So it's short enough to, it doesn't feel, like it drags out. I guess from the same filmmakers that brought us Quarantine and As Above, So Below. I like Quarantine not as much as Wreck, the original Spanish version. As Below, So Below I didn't like as much as everyone else did. But the scenes with Cheryl Dempsey, when we do see the killer on camera, he has like that old school like doctor mask with like the beak and the glasses. He turns her into a sex slave. She has to address him as master. He makes her wear like this maid outfit with a creepy mask. There's even a scene where he has these two Girl Scouts come into his house to sell him cookies, and they hear crying. And he's asking, like, do your parents know your route and where you go? And they're like, yeah. They're asking what that crying is. They get creeped out. He says, why don't you show yourselves out? And I kind of missed it. Either as the table or under the table was the girl with this sort of porcelain mask. But, she was found, for like years, she was kept as a sex slave. But then she was found, and horrific torture, sexual and physical torture is talked about. They interview her, and she's got extreme Stockholm syndrome. She even goes to like scratch her head, but her hand's gone. It's just a stump. She talks about how her love will come back for her. 2 weeks later, it says that she took her own life. Her note talked about her undying love. Then her body was stolen. This movie goes all over the place with this killer pretty much doing everything imaginable. Every kind of serial killer. Does not discriminate a victim. Every type of MO you can imagine. Incredibly smart. The only downfall, I will say, would be the dialogue. The dialogue does sound like it's written by someone who has a very basic knowledge of law enforcement, serial killers, sort of terms. Because it doesn't... It sounds like very basic kind of dialogue. Like when it opens up, it's like, when the serial killer was out there, we thought we had him. When we found the tapes, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And it does, I don't really know how to explain it. It sounds like very basic, kind of like someone who has a very base knowledge of serial killers and MOs, sort of terms that FBI would use. and I'm not saying this has to be like an expert level, like true documentary. I know it's still supposed to be entertaining, but it was just something that I noticed that the dialogue was kind of, I don't really want to say infantile or basic, but yeah, basic. That's really the only, not really downfall, but I guess flaw with it, because I really enjoyed this. I loved the shot on video look of the home movies, even as degraded and grainy and wavy that it was. The acting wasn't bad, just the dialogue. Most of the people, like, I could kind of buy as law enforcement officers or FBI agents. Apart from the dialogue, you know, the way they looked and talked, their acting was fine. So, this is one of my favorite found footage films, I'd have to say, or sort of shockumentary, faux documentary, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I'm glad I definitely got the Poughkeepsie tapes. For me, it was very entertaining. I really liked it. I thought it was well done. But yeah, Poughkeepsie tapes, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.